It is Jay. Jay from Utah. Pronouns are she, her, and Jay, you can only blame yourself because your headset died, unfortunately. But we have a few minutes. What did you want to talk about?
Hey, sorry about that confusion or that mess up earlier, but I just really was curious about I guess, current, I'm trying to be fast while also thinking, but previous depiction of non-binary individuals in TV and I guess popular media versus current. I know the most recent one I can think of is, I don't know if anyone watches Grey's Anatomy or it's just me that's left as the sole audience member, but recently they brought on a cast member, Dr. Kai Bartley, and it's played, they're played by also a non-binary actor named E.R. Fightmaster. But previously, the only other non-binary character that I'd seen on popular TV was, if anyone watches Billions, Taylor, played by, I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but also played by a non-binary actor. And I think I'm most curious as to what your all's thoughts are on if there's any advancements that maybe have been happening within popular media or television or other media regarding non-binary depiction to the general public.
If I could quickly go first, we actually talked about non-binary and trans characters in video games. It was the episode with myself and Puck and Phoebe Rose. So all three of us do think that we are headed in the right direction, Jay. If you want to check out that clip, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So yeah, check out that clip, and we have more time to talk about it there than we do today. So I will let one of these two fine folks weigh in.
Laura, I don't know if you've got anything. I'll just say that, there are non-binary folks on TV if you really get around to the edges. Like I think, Jay, you mentioned a Showtime show that I haven't caught. I know that Sex Education has a NB character, and there are smattering around around the universe. I know people like to point to Star Trek Discovery and some of these other things. I just can't think of enough examples to really even have a data set to work from. Laura, I mean, do you feel like there's much to hang your hat on here?
So I'm right there with Nate, that I know far more about video games than I do about movies. And I know that in the video game industry, World of Warcraft, and like I play Magic the Gathering online because I'm that big of a dork, and they have non-binary characters. I love it. Yeah, I'm addicted. No, but it is definitely increasing in the video game and online game realms. I don't know about TV, but I will say that we still have a long way to go, period. Not just with non-binary, but with LGBT representation across the board. We need more movies and TV shows and video games that represent the whole spectrum of genders and sexualities and orientations. But yeah, I think honestly, if I were to take a guess at it from what I've heard, I would say the video game industry might be like a step ahead of the movie and TV industry.
Agreed.
Yeah. What I am hearing from the chat is that the actor from the show Billions is also the same actor that came to my mind from the John Wick franchise and from Orange is the New Black, which good for them. Glad they're getting work. But also, if all of the examples that are coming to my mind are of the exact same actor, that feels problematic, right?
Definitely, yeah. I can understand that completely. And I think also, I guess, to tie along with that, if there's time, I know that, like, obviously, like, the Bechdel test exists, and I know the Vito Russo test exists in terms of, like, the LGBT plus spectrum in media. But I'm wondering if, like, that representation is apparent in those popular TV show roles where, because it seems like, at least with the two characters that I mentioned off the top of my head, it seems like their portrayal versus, like, business, or, like, I'm at the top of my field, and almost, like, sexless, and then like somehow like a switch changes where that's obviously not the case with any other kind of character, but it seems like specifically with those two, and I don't know if maybe you all or anyone else in the chat like think like that's just my small microcosm of what I'm consuming, or if that's popular across other media.
I do feel like that is a story that we're familiar with, that if somebody's sexuality is outside of the standard narrative, and particularly I think with NB folks, we do kind of presume that there's like an asexuality blended in with it, or at least like a certain like distance and discomfort with sexuality. We so often portray NB folks as being alienated from their gender. Oftentimes, if a character is NB in a show, or even if they aren't like explicitly labeled as non-binary, if they are tomboyish or feminine or whatever, the idea, particularly for quote unquote tomboyish women, is usually that, well, they're just women who have been traumatized, and so they'd like to act not woman-like. And that's a valid experience, but I do feel like that's something that comes up in media perhaps more than it should, and more than, it's just something that denies a more rounded, more grounded representation.
Yeah, well said.
I think right now, too.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I had one final thought about it, is that like right now in media, because culture is changing so rapidly, I think a lot of non-binary or any sort of LGBT representation is very hyperbolized right now, and it needs to be more normalized. Like we need to get to the point where the character just is what they are without it being sort of highlighted, or without these certain quote unquote like LGBT experiences being like the forefront of the show. Just having them be a character that's non-binary, and not have it be something that is to prove a point, right? So I think right now what we're seeing is a lot of hyperbole and stereotypes, and what we really need is just more characters that are just there doing their thing. And I think Discovery is an awesome example of that, but even they hyperbolize it just a little bit.
I think they did pretty good with Tig Notaro as the crusty lesbian engineer, because like it didn't even come out that her character was a lesbian until like she'd already been on a few episodes, and then she just casually mentioned it in passing, kind of like as a joke. I like that, and I just love Tig Notaro, so
who doesn't love Tig Notaro?
And I think I'm thinking amazing. Of a different character. There was a girl that came on, I can't remember her name, actually it was a non-binary character, but presented as female in the beginning, and was sort of what Christy was talking about, where she is like struggling with that she identity. And that's where I was pulling that sort of, they do it a little bit in Discovery, but you're right. I think in other ways they nail it.
It's a great show. Jay, we do need to move on, but thank you very much for calling. And yeah, if you want to hear more about Puck, myself, and Phoebe's thoughts on LGBTQ plus representation in media, I encourage you to check out the show from a couple of weeks ago, okay?
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for calling. Wow, that was an interesting way to wrap up the show, with a little bit of Star Trek Discovery discussion.
Not at all the first time, by the way, that secular sexuality has been derailed into a deep dive about Star Trek, Deep Space Nine for life. I know that we're past time. I know that we're wrapping up. I know that there's so much in this conversation that we didn't get to. I guess I want to just very quickly say that the most recent season of Sex Education featured a non-binary character and a non-binary relationship pretty prominently. And they did so in a way that I think is worth the digression, just because they highlighted the fact that this was a NB character who was assigned female at birth, that was entering into a relationship with a ostensibly cishet male. And there was a real discussion about the fact that this male character envisioned himself as being in a cishet relationship, that he still viewed his partner as being a woman, and that there was something to be really wrestled with there. And as somebody who is perhaps not gender queer, but is maybe leaning in that direction. I know that when I've been in relationships with women, it's often sort of a well, you're just a feminine guy, and I really like that about you. And there is some invisibility that goes into that. And I really appreciate Jay just bringing all of this up. I'd encourage anybody who hasn't caught that show to maybe spend a little bit of time with it. Sex Education on Netflix is a good time.